Well, at least there's nothing to talk about. We got nothing to talk about, right?
True.
Nothing at all. There he is.
Hello.
What's up, Forrest?
Boris, how are you,
What's up,
sir?
everybody? Good to see you guys.
Yeah.
Crazy timeline, man.
I heard there's nothing to talk about, Jerry. You were just saying there's nothing in Bitcoin that's interesting anymore.
Yeah, it might actually, we should do that right now because, there's a lot of people who are kind of interested in this conversation right now. And I think it would actually be a useful exercise for us to kind of go around the horn here and maybe just, state our stance and what we've been doing and kind of what we're thinking about. It doesn't have to be like a 5-minute thing, but just kind of give a little bit of background of like, who's funding you.
Big Bitcoin.
Yeah, Forrest.
It's all big Bitcoin, baby.
I saw Forrest got a free hardware device from Jade yesterday, so he's cooked.
I'm bought and sold. Yeah,
Holy
that's it. I think there's a contingent of, at the top there with BIP-110 and the hard fork that's ensuing that I don't think they think of it that way, Jor. I think they really do think that they are doing what's best and that Bitcoin is being attacked. And I think that actually a lot of it is that they don't really care what other people think. Like, I listened to a competing watch party from last Saturday with I think Giacomo and Tone Vase and a bunch of them did a watch party, and they were talking about how they know Luke more personally, some of them, and they said Luke Dasher is a sort of a contrarian type thinker who doesn't give in to peer pressure. He doesn't care what other people think, and I think that that's really true. Actually, I mean, his skin might not be totally thick. I think, he might have the most blocked accounts under his block list, maybe. but he also, from my public interactions with him and seeing him talk publicly, he seems to really just have his own opinion and really stick with it. But that doesn't mean that he's looking out for the best interest of other people, right? With what he's doing. And I think that a lot of people are just kind of, they think he's some sort of savior, that he's saved. Maybe he did, or maybe, I don't know, whatever. But, he's been good for Bitcoin or not, or whatever. People have different opinions about him, but they're just kind of following along. And he's just creating an altcoin right now, a hard forked altcoin of Bitcoin off its UTXO set. And I don't think he cares what is in the best interest of other people. He's doing what he believes in is best for himself and for Bitcoin, and people can follow or not, which I think is an interesting thing. So, I mean, that's where my perspective is with that. And then, to further answer your question, same as you, I don't have any sponsors on YouTube. I think I did 2 sponsored videos early on for Orange Pill app and 4 for the Bitcoin Way, and it just felt slightly disingenuous, even though I do believe that those are fairly decent products. And then I have affiliate links, but the affiliate programs allow you to say what you want. You either get people to use them or not based on, how positive you talk about something. I do have an affiliate link for the Jade, and I always talk about how bad of a form factor the Blockstream Jade is and how finicky it is. And I've sold like 3 of them. So, okay, whatever. I can say shit about it if I want. People can use my link or not. It doesn't really matter to me. And that's what is nice about an affiliate versus a sponsorship is if, if I decide that I don't want to promote that thing anymore, I don't have to. There's no contract, there's no lock-in, there's no obligation. It's a little more freeing with that. But, people can make up their mind whether that's just my opinion, the way I think about that. So that's my channel. And then, happy to talk about more of the hard fork stuff as we go along too.
And you were a big proponent of knots.
Yeah, I was a big proponent of knots, and I think that BIP-110 killed knots. Actually, I think Luke is the main developer of knots, and I don't think he's going to develop it for Bitcoin anymore. It's open source code, so somebody could fork it, but somebody has to maintain it. And it's actually a lot of work what he did to maintain it, and he's going to upgrade knots to support the altcoin that he now has. And I think they even picked a hashing algorithm recently, Blake to be or not to be. That is the question. I believe that's the algorithm that he's hashing now. But yeah, so that's dead in the water, in my opinion. There's a few other implementations. I think different implementations that are consensus valid is a good idea to have. I don't think that we should. I think without that, we do become more dependent on one team of developers, which is, yeah, I don't know. We need to see other implementations. I think another thing here, guys, with the hard fork, and I'll just say my prediction with this is a fraction of a fraction of a fraction, right? Knots, then BIP-110, then hard fork, a tiny minority of Bitcoin to knots to BIP to Bitcoin, whatever it's going to end up be calling. It's a really, really small fraction of people, and it's an even smaller fraction of people that are going to sell their real Bitcoin to actually buy this other coin. I've talked to many, many plebs who are pro BIP-110 over the last few days on Twitter, and they all say, well, I'm just going to buy IBIT, or I'm going to hold my Bitcoin because it's NGU and it's totally captured, and Saylor's going to keep pumping the bags, and they have this narrative around that and how it's all centrally controlled, malicious miners, all this, but they still see it going up in value, and yet they still ideologically have just divested from it, and ideologically they now subscribe to the basically, I believe it's a complete psyop that they've basically fallen for at this point. And Jerry, you were said you were in there and all that too, and so was I, right? Personal conversations with all these people heavily involved, running knots, helping people run knots. Ran BIP-110 early on myself, and then began to question a lot of things, understanding the purpose of op return, the reason core changed, why they didn't change back. All these other things led me down the rabbit hole of understanding that this is actually a non-issue. And the conversation that people were having was completely separate than the actual issue, which is, where does spam go in Bitcoin, and where is it the least harmful? And how do we mitigate the harm that spam does to Bitcoiners until the system of fees can reduce spam to basically nothing? And so, yeah, anyway, so it's going to be a tiny small fraction of people that are supporting this hard fork, and the financial capital they'll have is next to nothing. So some people will lose money, some people go all in because they've just dug they're down there with Matt Cratter with a shovel, and he's saying, hey, help me dig this hole that I've dug myself into. And they're down there too, digging too. So a few, but I think a lot of them are just going to hold their Bitcoin because they don't actually really believe in the number go up of the other coin, which is part of the reason that they're involved in Bitcoin as well, right? I think that's, a lot of us talk like price doesn't matter and stuff, but price does matter in a lot of ways. It's a lot of information put into the price. It's a broader sort of metric for adoption in general. And then it's also, well, it means that if people are buying it and holding it, taking it off of exchanges, it's becoming a larger portion of their savings, their investment, and their mind share is going towards that. Their value is going towards that. And that pushes it into the ability to become, all the other things that we believe Bitcoin will be: medium of exchange and neutral monetary network for the globe, and so on.
See, this is what I'm talking about right here, man. Can you give us a something better than that?
No, they can't.
I have an interesting question, especially for the people that have seen Bitcoin Cash themselves. I haven't, because I came into Bitcoin in 2020. Do you guys think the Luke coin, or like whatever it will be, has a chance of being as big as Bitcoin Cash? And I've asked that question because Bitcoin Cash initially had huge support. There were like big people. It's almost like it would almost be similar as Michael Saylor now supporting the new Luke coin. Like Bitcoin Cash has had serious support from miners, from big spokespeople. Like you can make the argument it almost had consensus back then, way more consensus that BIP-110 or like the new coin of Luke ever had and ever will have. So I think it will be way smaller than Bitcoin Cash, but I'm curious if you guys think that potentially has a bigger, like, I know it will fail, but do you guys think that it has a potential to be as big as Bitcoin Cash once was?
Not even close. Not even close. I mean, it's it's this weird subjective thing where what did BIP-110 change? It changed the way spammers have to spam to do the same thing they want to do. And really the huge breaking point of me not supporting BIP-110 was that all the people that were at the forefront of it, the vanguard of BIP-110, were just saying, we're just explicitly saying by introducing this BIP that Bitcoin we're not allowing Bitcoin to be used as data storage, even though it completely 100% could still be used as data storage by people that wanted to spam it. So all it was is just this subjective idea that because a team of developers that release free software that the vast majority of Bitcoiners use to run Bitcoin, I'm talking about Bitcoin Core, changed a default that now explicitly allowed Bitcoin to be used as data storage. This is just a complete subjective narrative, and that's the foundation of every argument they've had since then. And that foundation is flawed. So everything else built on top of it has these tiny truths. Yes, Bitcoin mining is too centralized. Yeah, more people need to run nodes. More plebs need to use nodes and actually use nodes. All of these little tiny things are true, but they're all built on a lie. They're all built on, or not a lie, just a falsehood, just a subjective falsehood that you can believe if you want, but the rest of the world doesn't believe it. It's really only a handful of people that actually think that. And so with that, BIP-110 is not making Bitcoin better. It wasn't making it better. It was just, again, this subjective thing that was just changing how you might define it based on what the devs decide to do, because there's a new team of devs that would that release the client for BIP-110. And at least with Bitcoin Cash, they were incorrect, but they were trying to make Bitcoin better, right? They created a hard fork that made bigger blocks so that transactions would be cheaper, right? It's at the surface level, second layer thinking, you begin to understand, oh, that makes Bitcoin less decentralized because it's harder to run a node because the nodes are bigger, and that's not the way to scale Bitcoin. But that's second layer. That's more complicated. You have to understand SegWit. You have to believe in the vision that Lightning became and all the other technologies that are still yet to be built on top of Bitcoin because of the changes that SegWit and Taproot have introduced. And at least there's a narrative there that kind of begins to make sense, right? So with BIP-110, it's just a matter of time before, like, oh, this is just Bitcoin again, but nobody's using it. There's no network. There's no protocol. There's no value. It's lost its value as Bitcoin. Why am I participating in this? So it's just a matter of time, and I don't think it's going to gain any significant. I literally think it's like maybe a couple thousand people are for.
You think
maybe.
Even that?
I don't know. Like, yeah, maybe not even.
There are a lot of people in the Discord channel. I monitor that a little bit just to I actually made the work. I exported their chat and put it into Claude to see what they're actually saying, like what they're doing, what is the discussions, who are the leaders in that movement. Because yes, it's like mainly Luke, but there's like other supporting casts to that. And
but how many people do you think are in there for the same reason that you are, Robin? Like if you're basing it off the number,
just to learn, right? This has been a great learning experience. So people are in there just to see out of just genuine curiosity, and then there's people that are in there because they want an airdrop and they think this is going to be worth something. So we have a tenth of what they have in the Discord. Should we launch a Bitcoin fork as well to see what how much money we could make from it, right? Like, I don't know. There's nothing there. That's why I'm kind of just saying we can basically ignore this thing. We're stuck between a soft fork and a hard fork right here as we talk. But I think that this is ultimately a nothing burger, and I think that it's the same thing as every other crypto, in my opinion, where we just go ahead, go nuts. The three devs that are working on this hard fork, go nuts, introduce whatever you want. Make this Bitcoin fork as pure as you possibly want. If you end up making any good ideas, the devs on actual Bitcoin will introduce that into Bitcoin in some sort of BIP and fashion. So, I mean, that's always been my thesis around crypto in general, is if anything useful on crypto ever happens, which is, we're still waiting for, besides Bitcoin, besides money, then Bitcoin can adopt it on some layer at some level. I mean, there's going to be a big, nice boost. There'll be an initial boost. And I think Bitcoin Cash is basically held on because it's a proof of work chain with any sort of semblance of network. And so there's miners that they're basically, they need somebody to sell to. So there might be a little bit of that going on with this Dash coin, after it launches with whatever ASICs. We're mining some other shit coin. They'll move over to this one and pump up its price and popularity for a short time. I mean, we might see that. But there was one other thing that we haven't really addressed that I wanted to ask you guys about, because this is the new debate. And I think Brandon was mentioning actually how there's sort of always these future fears, right? The nuclear war is always on the horizon, right? This is the narrative that I've been seeing with the BIP-110 side, is that there's this fear on the horizon that like we can't not prove it. Like nuclear war is on the horizon. It's always this like Schrodinger's cat, right? It's there, but it's not there, right? You can't say that it's not going to happen because it's possible. So it's kind of this, all these things. Exactly. So it's the same thing I see going on with BIP-110, which is the most hilarious narrative, I think, is that miners are going to now push for 22 million coins. That they're not going to give themselves a halving anymore. They're going to increase the subsidy. There's demurrage, all these terrible ideas that people have come up with over time that are wildly unpopular are now all of a sudden going to get pushed in by miners, because miners completely control everything now, is sort of the narrative. I think it's ridiculous. And I think it is this moving the goalpost and moving the problem to this thing that you can literally go to your deathbed saying that it's just around the corner. Miners are going to push for 22 million, and you're never wrong, but you're also never right until we have a change in Bitcoin that is not popular by miners. A change that the nodes would want, and that actually gains enough popularity, which is actually why BIP-110 failed, in my opinion, not because miners colluded, but because there wasn't enough support to strong arm the miners into a change. Just wanted to get your guys' thought on that. Like, are the miners now malicious? That's the narrative, right? Are the miners in control? Do nodes not matter? I'd love to get your thoughts on that, because that's the new debate, and that's the new narrative, and that's the thing that will convince people to give up their Bitcoin at this point, from what I'm seeing. Yeah, you got to think about what miners are. Miners are net sellers of Bitcoin, and they are buyers of electricity and compute. And they either do it directly with their own operations, or they have a pool where other people sell their hash rate to them, and they are buyers of that hash rate in exchange for the Bitcoin that they then sell to fund operations. So if they try to do something that's wildly unpopular to the masses of Bitcoiners and the holders and the buyers of Bitcoin, you and I and all of us, then those people stop buying Bitcoin, and then there's no buyers for the miners to sell to. So they cannot do something that misaligns incentives where they disrupt the value proposition of Bitcoin. They are subservient to the broader network. They do have some power. And again, this is the thing with the BIP-110 narrative, is there's these little kernels of truth. Miners do have some power. We just saw them have power of being able to mine blocks that created the heaviest chain that made a soft fork not happen. They have power to create blocks, but that doesn't mean that they're not subservient to the broader Bitcoin network, because their mining operations stop being profitable if no one wants to buy their Bitcoin because of what changes they are trying to implement.
Good point. And again, trying to bully people and say it's my way or the highway and all that's not going to work. But this is a question, and Forrest answered it. But Shane wants to know, and this is kind of like the big 800-pound gorilla in the room. They assume that if you're not running BIP-110, that means you're for spam. That's the narrative. If you don't want BIP-110, that means you want spam. So Forrest.
I mean, I'll just quickly say, I'm not going to pull up all of the information. This has been months and months of this going on, because the original proposition of BIP-110 was that it was going to reduce spam, right, in these certain data fields. And as soon as all that information was released and the code bases were there, spammers quickly went to work and completely routed around all of them. So they were able to do ordinals, stamps, BRC20 wasn't even affected at all. because it was only going to reduce op return to the consensus level of 83 bytes, which is all compliant with runes anyway. So essentially, all spamming techniques are just created in a BIP-110 compliant way. So then the narrative had to shift, and it is that meme of the guy standing at the conveyor belt in the factory. Oh, we're making this now, right? It's gone from toys to consumer drones to military equipment, right? It's just the goalpost always moves, or the thing that we're doing is always moving. It's always shifting. Now it's malicious miners and all that shit that we've already talked about. So the narrative went to what I talked about initially, which is that Core changing the policy of op return explicitly calls Bitcoin data storage. And again, that's a subjective belief. And that is the only thing that BIP-110 was doing, is signaling to the broader market, which is another word for that is virtue signaling, considering it didn't actually do anything really, is it's signaling to the market that Bitcoin is not explicitly being advertised or used as data storage, even though it was 100% was completely capable of still being so under a BIP-110 under BIP-110 rules. And that is just a ridiculous reason to change something at the consensus level of Bitcoin, the rules that we all abide by voluntarily being in Bitcoin. Making changes to that to signal something that is a subjective belief is risk for no reward. And you cannot risk and disrupt the base layer of Bitcoin, the consensus layer of Bitcoin, without serious reward doing so. You put everybody's savings in jeopardy, right? At the end of the day, Bitcoin is software. And, all the gold bugs out there, they have a valid argument that that's something physical that they can have that has history, and Bitcoin is just software. And if we start messing with the software too much at the consensus layer, they have a really good argument, and we just become crypto again, because that's all crypto does too. Yeah. So we need to protect that at every possible level that we can, and we should be adamantly against, as Bitcoiners, we should be staunchly against soft forks and hard forks immediately upon hearing about them. Then we can start saying, okay, you have that proposal. I am naturally against it. Now tell me why I shouldn't be. Convince me really well. Oh, it's for spam? Okay, I don't like spam. Is it effective? No? Let's not do it then. Is it virtue signaling? I don't care about that. I don't give a shit about signaling virtue. I just want this to work efficiently and have stability.
What do we say on the other side? And that was great. That was a great breakdown for us. But the people on the other side, and I was there, that say, okay, I hear you, Forrest, and that, and doesn't stop spam and this, that, and the third. But what gives Bitcoin Core the right to open up the op return from 80 to 100,000 and without our permission? What do we say to the people about that? Because that's the number one thing and we have to combat that. What do you guys think about that?
It's a private group of developers. They can do whatever they want. We don't have any control over what other people do with their actions.
Bitcoin Core isn't Bitcoin, right?
Bitcoin Core isn't Bitcoin. That's exactly right, George. That's exactly right. Bitcoin Core is the reference implementation. So what they do does have effect, but what they did was they changed a policy default. And you can go into Core, and you
can still do it, right, Forrest? You could still you could already do it. Yeah,
100%. You can change it. You can change it back. It's the default policy. The reason they changed that default policy is because it no longer worked, and everybody's nodes were being slowed down, or not having compact block relay as efficient, and it was creating it was basically routing around certain nodes. So certain nodes that had more restrictive defaults at that layer were being kind of removed from certain networks. So transactions would move to the miners that wanted to see them. Out of band transactions were happening. This would benefit and centralize mining in some minute way. It's not a big deal that they did this. It's free open source software that a team of developers releases, and you have the option to download and use it. There is a problem where we have relied on this one team too much, and we aren't supporting alternate implementations. That's what Core was, or that's what Knots was. The reaction to what Core did, a perfectly reasonable and adequate response, was moving over to Bitcoin knots and having different default implementations, supporting a different developer team and funding them and doing all of that. That was a completely reasonable response. And yeah, so there is some control. But again, if Bitcoin Core tried to make a change, they literally did make a change, a minute change to policy defaults, and 25% of the network moved over to a different implementation. So it had an effect. If they tried to make a change to consensus layer, what would happen then, right? That would be a forceful change that everybody would see happen, and it would be something they would have to upgrade to or not upgrade to. They would have to reject or accept. And then we could basically actually begin to have the conversation that we've had for this last year of Core having too much power and actually trying to change something fundamental at Bitcoin's layer. And then we could reject that if we wanted to, based on that change. But policy is a lot of the policy change to Bitcoin has been inflated in its importance drastically. You know, the reports of Bitcoin's death have been, you know, over-reported, or whatever that saying is. It's such a minor issue that was blown so far out of proportion, basically. But I mean, still, there's all these little kernels of truth. Should we only have one reference implementation? Should we have? I think we should still have other implementations that don't break consensus. We need more dev teams. We need more people independently working on non-consensus breaking software, so that we don't have to rely on whatever Core does. And again, the only change they can effectively implement to Bitcoin is at the policy level. If they try to do something at consensus level, it will be way more heavily scrutinized than what happened here.